I waited by the window longer than I should have. The streetlights hummed outside, pale orange halos flickering against wet pavement, but my eyes were fixed on the driveway. Every sound, passing tires, footsteps on the sidewalk, even the faint creak of the neighbor's porch swing, pulled me forward, desperate for the rhythm of her car pulling in, the slam of a familiar door, the shadow that meant home. Hours stretched. My hand trembled against the glass, not from fear, but from that gnawing anticipation people call hope, the cruelest companion a lonely man can carry. She wasn't late the first year we married. Back then, her voice always preceded her, spilling through the doorway before she appeared, laughter clinging to her coat, perfume melting into the walls. I would turn toward her, ready, arms open, heart willing. Now, silence stalked our house. The walls listened more than I did, and still, she hadn't come. By midnight, I stopped pretending. The dinner I had cooked hours ago lay cold, untouched, candles sagging in their holders like tired sentinels defeated by time. I pushed the plates aside, poured whiskey into a glass, and sat down across from her empty chair. Shadows filled the space where her face should have been, and I found myself whispering questions into the dark. Why? Who? How long? None of them answered. When the clock hit 1, the door finally cracked open. She walked in without apology, tossing keys onto the counter, her heels tapping sharp confessions across the hardwood. Her hair was undone, eyes heavy with something I couldn't name but recognized instantly, an echo of touch that didn't belong to me. I stood, ready to confront, but she cut me off with words sharper than any blade. Be grateful I even showed up. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was indifferent, and that hurt worse. Cruelty meant passion, indifference meant emptiness. My chest tightened, but I refused to bow. Why? I asked, voice breaking against the silence between us. Why, when you don't live here anymore? Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Maybe guilt, maybe rage, maybe the smallest fragment of regret. Then, nothing. She shrugged out of her coat, dropped it carelessly onto the chair that once held my waiting love, and walked past me toward the bedroom as though I were furniture. I stood there, still holding the glass, still hearing my own words echo. You don't live here anymore. It was true. She hadn't lived here in months. Not really. She slept, sometimes she ate, sometimes she smiled, rarely. But her body was a vessel carrying secrets away from me each night, delivering them to someone else. And I remained here, anchored in this house that had turned into a mausoleum of vows broken before they even cooled. My thoughts spiraled as the sound of running water reached me from the bathroom. She was showering, rinsing away the scent of her night. That sound was worse than silence. It mocked me, sang me reminders of hands that weren't mine, lips that weren't mine, moments that weren't ours. My whiskey glass trembled, spilling amber onto the table, but I didn't move to clean it. Instead, I whispered again, softer this time, not for her, not for anyone else, only for myself. You don't live here anymore. And the house, for once, seemed to agree. The shower stopped. Steam crept under the bathroom door, curling across the hallway like ghostly fingers. I stayed in the dining room, glass clutched too tightly, heartbeat pounding against ribs that felt too fragile to hold it. I thought about walking away, sleeping on the couch, pretending nothing was wrong. But pretending had already devoured me whole. Every late night, every excuse, every glance at her phone followed by that quick, guilty flick of her thumb, pretending had become my prison. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, skin glowing from heat, I almost remembered why I had once called her salvation. My chest ached with hunger, not just for her touch but for her truth. She crossed the hallway without looking at me, as though my existence were background noise, as though my presence interrupted her world instead of anchoring it. "Where were you?" I asked, forcing my voice steady, though inside I quivered with equal parts rage and longing. She froze, hand on the bedroom door. Slowly, she turned, eyes narrowing just enough to wound. "Out," she said. Nothing more. No explanation. No softness. Just that single word, sharp and final. but my senses betrayed her. The perfume clinging to her wasn't the one I bought for her anniversary. It was sweeter, heavier, the kind that lingered on skin long after it should fade. And beneath it, faint but undeniable, was cologne. Masculine. Foreign. My stomach twisted. I stepped closer, desperate to bridge the distance, desperate to either pull her back or push her away. My fingers itched to grab her wrist, to demand answers, to hold on to what little remained of the woman I thought belonged to me. But I didn't touch her. Instead, I whispered, "Do you even remember what it felt like to come home to me?" Her eyes softened then, just for a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat I saw the woman I married. The girl who used to laugh into my neck, the lover who once trembled beneath my hands, the partner who whispered promises beneath starlit skies. But the moment vanished. She looked away, lips pressing into a line of disdain. "You wouldn't understand," she muttered. Those words carved me open. Understand what? That I wasn't enough? That someone else gave her fire I could no longer spark? That love, once fractured, could never be glued together without showing the cracks? She vanished into the bedroom, closing the door with the same quiet finality she had spoken. I stood outside, chest heaving, torn between slamming the door open and collapsing onto the floor. Instead, I paced the hallway like a ghost haunting his own life. The house smelled of her: soap, perfume, sin. I pressed my palm against the wall, grounding myself, forcing air into my lungs. My body burned, not with desire alone, but with jealousy, grief, rage, lust tangled in one suffocating knot. I wanted her, even if she was no longer mine. I hated myself for it. Finally, I crept into the bedroom. She lay there, already turned away, hair spilling across the pillow, bare shoulder peeking from under the blanket. The rise and fall of her breath mocked me, steady, unconcerned. I slid onto my side of the bed, the chasm between us wider than oceans, yet her warmth close enough to set my skin on fire. Sleep never came. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, whispering the words she would never hear. "You are here, but you are gone. And I am left with shadows, perfume, and silence." The night refused me sleep. Every tick of the clock sliced deeper into my chest, marking time I could never reclaim. I lay on my side, listening to her breath, steady and distant, though she was inches away. The warmth of her body seeped beneath the covers, teasing me, torturing me, reminding me of what I used to hold freely. My hand hovered in the space between us. I didn't dare touch her, though my skin burned for it. Once I had known her entirely, every curve, every sigh, every quiver. Now she felt foreign, unreachable, like a star I could see but never claim. The cruelest part? My desire hadn't vanished. If anything, betrayal made it fiercer, sharper, like craving forbidden fruit more after being told it belongs to someone else. At some point, she shifted. Her shoulder brushed my arm, and sparks shot through me, uninvited. My chest clenched. Did she notice? Did she remember? Or was I invisible even in contact? I swallowed hard, turning my face toward her hair. It smelled different, faintly of smoke, maybe a bar, maybe his hands. My throat tightened. I whispered into the dark, though I knew she wouldn't answer. "Tell me you still feel me." Her breathing hitched. Just for a second. Enough to let me know she wasn't fully asleep. But instead of responding, she shifted further away, her back an unspoken barrier between us. That small movement crushed me more than any confession could have. Hours passed like that, me staring at the ceiling, her pretending to dream. When dawn crept into the room, pale light stretching across the floorboards, I rose. My body ached with exhaustion, but the greater weight was emotional. I left the room quietly, careful not to disturb her. She had already given enough of herself away elsewhere. She didn't need me demanding fragments. In the kitchen, I made coffee, the bitter aroma filling the air. I sipped it slowly, hands trembling around the mug, as though caffeine could cure betrayal. My mind, however, refused to calm. Every detail screamed at me: the scent on her skin, the tone of her voice, the indifference in her gaze. All of it confirmed what my heart already knew but refused to fully accept. She was slipping away, and I was powerless. When she finally emerged, it was almost noon. Hair tied loosely, eyes heavy, she looked beautiful in that careless way that broke me. She poured herself a cup, ignoring my presence, as though I were just another piece of furniture. My chest burned, but I forced myself to speak. "You don't have to hide it anymore," I said, voice quiet, trembling but determined. Her hand froze mid-pour. Slowly, she set the pot down, eyes meeting mine. There was no shock, no guilt, only something colder, something honest. "And if I'm not hiding it?" she asked. The words landed like a blade. My knuckles whitened around the mug. Desire and rage battled within me, one urging me to reach across the counter, to claim her, to remind her she was mine, the other demanding I walk away before I drowned completely. But I couldn't walk away. Not yet. My love, however battered, still tethered me. My lust, however poisoned, still drew me in. I wanted to hate her, but hate was too simple. What I felt was far more complex, far more destructive. "I just want the truth," I said, each syllable heavier than the last. She took a sip, lips brushing the rim of the cup, eyes never leaving mine. Then she smiled, a faint, knowing smile that carried both cruelty and allure. "The truth," she whispered, "isn't always what you want." And with that, she walked past me, leaving her scent trailing behind, a reminder of both betrayal and the unbearable pull she still had on me. The kitchen still smelled of her perfume long after she left the room. I sat there, motionless, staring at the space she had just occupied, wondering how someone could feel so near and so untouchable. My coffee had gone cold, but I kept drinking, bitter liquid matching the taste in my chest. All morning, I told myself I wouldn't chase her. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't fall at her feet while she carried pieces of herself elsewhere. But by afternoon, when she moved through the house with that careless sway, hips shifting in ways she didn't even notice, my resolve fractured. I followed her to the living room, unable to resist. She sat on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs tucked beneath her, a picture of indifference. My throat tightened. I wanted to demand who he was, where she had been, why she came home at all. Instead, I found myself stepping closer, drawn by gravity stronger than pride. "You're killing me," I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up from the screen, cool, unreadable. "No. You're killing yourself." The words stung, but I didn't retreat. My hand moved before my mind could stop it, brushing against her arm. The contact was small, meaningless, but it set fire through my veins. She didn't pull away, not immediately. That hesitation was enough. Memories flooded me. Our first kiss under a street lamp, her laughter spilling over wine, the nights when she whispered my name like it belonged only to her. My hand lingered, sliding down to her wrist, fingers brushing her skin. She finally looked at me fully then, and in her eyes I saw not love, not hate, but something far more dangerous: temptation. "You think this changes anything?" she whispered. "I don't care," I breathed. "I just need to remember." She tilted her head, studying me. Then, almost cruelly, she leaned closer. Her breath brushed my cheek, warm and intoxicating. I could smell the faint trace of smoke, the shadow of someone else's touch, but it only sharpened my hunger. Her lips hovered near mine, but she didn't close the distance. Instead, she pulled back, leaving me suspended in that torturous moment. "You want me," she said, voice calm, almost taunting. "I'll always want you." She smiled then, not soft, but wicked. "And that's why you'll never let me go." The words were truth wrapped in venom. I hated them, yet I couldn't deny them. My grip on her wrist tightened, desperate, pleading without words. She let me hold her, though I felt the strength in her stillness, the control she wielded effortlessly. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced down, a flicker of a smirk crossing her lips before she silenced it. My chest caved. Whoever it was, I knew it wasn't me. But still, she stayed. She didn't rise, didn't walk away. She allowed me that touch, that moment, as though reminding me she could take it away whenever she wished. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead against hers, not brave enough to steal what wasn't freely given. My body trembled with restraint, torn between desire and rage, love and betrayal. Every nerve screamed for more, but pride chained me in place. She whispered then, so soft I almost didn't hear. "Careful. Wanting me will ruin you." I pulled back, barely, searching her face. She was right. But ruin was already inside me. The phone buzz stayed with me long after she silenced it. That single vibration spoke louder than her words, louder than her silence, louder than anything I had ever feared. She didn't flinch, didn't hide, didn't even bother to step away. It was almost worse than catching her in the act. This open indifference, this confidence that I already knew and couldn't stop her. When she left the room, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the spot where she had been. My hand still tingled from her skin. My heart still burned from her nearness. But beneath it all, something colder crept in, curiosity sharpened into obsession. I needed to know who he was. The shadow haunting my marriage needed a face. That night, when she finally fell asleep, I waited until her breathing steadied, until her body sank fully into the mattress. Then, with trembling fingers, I reached for her phone on the nightstand. It felt like betrayal, but how could I betray someone who had already abandoned me in spirit? The screen lit up, casting a pale glow across her sleeping face. For a moment, guilt threatened to paralyze me. But then I remembered the perfume, the cologne, the silence. I swiped. There it was. A name. Simple. Ordinary. Michael. Messages filled the screen, brief, cryptic, but heavy with meaning. Tonight was fire. Can't stop thinking of you. Wish you'd stay longer. My chest constricted. My vision blurred. I read them again and again, each word a dagger twisting deeper. I wanted to wake her, to shove the phone in her face, to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I put it back gently, as though nothing had happened. I turned away, lying on my side, staring into the darkness. The name echoed in my head like a curse. Michael. Morning came cruelly. She moved around the kitchen with ease, humming faintly, as though nothing had shifted. I watched her from the doorway, every motion a torment. Her hair caught the light, her lips curved in an unbothered line, her body still mine in memory but not in truth. Finally I asked, "Who's Michael?" The question hung heavy, almost tangible. She stilled, back to me, hand frozen on the coffee pot. Slowly she turned, eyes locking with mine. No panic. No denial. Just that same calm cruelty. "You already know," she said. It wasn't an admission, it was a dismissal. My knees nearly buckled. Rage surged, hot and dangerous, but underneath it, desire clawed at me. She stood there, proud, untouchable, and I hated that even now I wanted to drag her into my arms, to remind her who I was. "Why him?" I asked, my voice breaking. She smiled faintly, almost pitying. "Because he's not you." The words crushed me. Yet in their cruelty, they carried truth I couldn't ignore. Something had died between us long before Michael arrived. Maybe I had ignored it, maybe I had smothered it with routine, maybe I had loved her in all the wrong ways. But none of that excused her betrayal. Still, when she stepped closer, when her fingers grazed my arm as she passed, my body betrayed me again. Fire erupted under my skin, lust tangled with fury, longing intertwined with grief. She whispered as she brushed by me, low enough to sound like confession, "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." I stood frozen, her touch lingering like poison and honey both. I had my answer, and yet, instead of release, I felt shackled tighter. After her words, "Because he's not you," the house grew heavier, as though the walls themselves knew their role in holding secrets. I walked away, but each step dragged chains behind me. I ended up at the dining table, staring at the same 2 plates from nights before, relics of love left to rot. By evening, she joined me. Not with apology, not with guilt, but with casual grace, as if nothing had cracked between us. She poured herself wine, set the glass down, and smiled faintly. That smile, sharp, knowing, dangerous, was both dagger and drug. "Why do you stay?" she asked, as if I had been the one with choices. I looked at her, studying the curve of her neck, the way candlelight softened her skin. I wanted to answer with anger, with accusations, with the truth of her betrayal. Instead, what came out was something shameful, something honest. "Because I still want you." Her laughter rang out, soft but merciless. "Wanting and having are different things." I clenched my fists under the table. She was right, and she knew it. My love was no longer partnership, it was hunger. My desire wasn't unity, it was survival. I had become addicted to the very woman who poisoned me. We ate in silence, but it wasn't silence at all. Every glance she gave me was a test. Every brush of her hand as she reached for the bread was a dare. Lust threaded through the air, but it wasn't tender, it was violent, dangerous, doomed. Halfway through the meal, she leaned closer, wine on her breath, eyes glinting. "You could leave, you know." I shook my head. "And let him win?" She smirked. "This isn't about him. It's about you." I wanted to scream. Instead, I reached across the table, grabbed her hand. For the first time in weeks, she didn't pull away. My grip was desperate, pleading, almost bruising. She let me hold her, and in that moment, the line between love and hate dissolved. "I don't care about him," I whispered. "I care about us." Her gaze softened, not with affection, but with pity. "There is no us. There hasn't been for a long time." My heart shattered, yet my body still leaned toward her, craving even a fraction of what used to be mine. It was pathetic, I knew. It was weakness, I knew. And yet, it was all I had left. When she finally stood, glass in hand, she brushed her lips against my cheek. Not love, not forgiveness, just a ghost of intimacy, enough to remind me of what I had lost. My knees nearly gave out. "I'll be out tonight," she said casually, as though announcing an errand. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I watched her walk away, every step a nail in the coffin of the man I used to be. The door closed behind her. Silence rushed in, heavy and suffocating. I sat there, staring at the empty chair, the untouched food, the wine glass still warm from her hand. Rage surged. Lust lingered. Grief settled. All of them tangled into one unbearable knot. I whispered into the void, words that no one would hear but me. Be grateful I even showed up. The irony wasn't lost. She was gone, body and soul. And yet, I stayed, chained to shadows, feeding on the memory of a woman who no longer lived here. The night stretched ahead, endless and cruel. I poured another glass of wine, raised it to the empty seat across from me, and drank to the ruin she left behind.